Hello, and welcome to Arts and Entertainment.
With Chris and Randall.
I'm Chris.
I'm Randall.
And today our guest is Jerry Leibowitz. Hey, Jerry, wave to
Hey
everybody.
guys. Hey guys.
We have done a number of episodes on animation. We've talked a little bit about comic book stuff, but not really a lot. And I think we've literally done nothing on graphic design. So we found the one guy who's worked in all three fields. And we're going to basically all the questions that we've been holding up for the last 90 plus episodes. We're just going to learn and we're going to ask. And it's pretty amazing. Jerry has great credits in all three of these fields. He has worked with and had collaborations with many notable people in these fields, even people you wouldn't think related to these fields. He's a professional animator. He has had shows on Disney, Fox, Netflix, UPN, lots of industry experience. Aren't we excited to have him on, Randall?
Very excited.
Jerry, we're very excited. But before we even get into this, as always, folks, please like, share, subscribe, and comment. Randall, what is a good way to reach us?
Check out our website, chrisandrandall.com. Also on Facebook, Arts and Entertainment with Chris and Randall. It's a good place to tell us how much you hate us. Thank you.
No, that's terrible. I really want to hear about how, again, we're having a dialogue with you guys, and we want to make the kinds of stuff that you find interesting. I have been wanting to get Jerry on the show pretty much since the very beginning. By the way, we're going to talk about his time as a graphic designer. Jerry very kindly redid the graphic that you see behind us. If you are listening and not watching, there will be a few visual things, but if you go to the website, you will see those illustrations that Jerry did. Jerry, before we even get into your three amazing careers, tell us a little bit, where are you from, man? Where'd you grow up?
Well, let me first say that this is the most excited anybody's ever been to see me. So thank you guys. Thank you guys for that. Usually people look the other way or they look down or pull out their phones when I walk in. So thank you guys for that. I just appreciate that. I grew up in Los Angeles. I'm a second generation native of LA. Went to all the schools here. In fact, I'm still living in the same city that I went to grammar school in.
So you're a local boy. So you grew up in the amazing 60s of Los Angeles. You saw it, man.
So what did your parents do?
So my dad was a salesman, worked in the car industry for many years. And my mom, of that generation, gave up her career. She was a CPA bookkeeper, and she kind of gave up her career to raise me. Which God bless her.
What neighborhood did you grow up in, and what schools did you go to?
So I grew up in West Los Angeles, in Culver City and in Palms, and I went to Hamilton High School.
That's a good school. That's a special school. A lot of artistic, creative folks come out of Hamilton.
It turned into a real performing arts school. So
anybody in your time that we might know
of? Not in the performing arts, but it was a pretty great basketball school when I was there. I played.
Wasn't that the school on Room 222 that they used for the?
Yeah, I think so. I think they used that in University High School.
That is so cool. Go ahead, Randall.
So Jerry, what year did you graduate high school?
Graduated in '67.
And so when you went to high school, Hamilton High School, did you get a good arts education while you were there?
Yeah, I did. There was a fellow named Mark Rodman who was in the class before me, and he was the school cartoonist for like 4 years.
Yeah.
And when he graduated, the art service, people making posters and things to put in, post all around the school. They needed another cartoonist, so I kind of filled that spot, and I was kind of immediately thrust into doing covers for annual sports folios and all different events that were going on at the school.
That was the first time you were ever doing just work that I wouldn't say commission, but work for other people.
Yeah, that's true.
How did that feel?
No, that's
all of a sudden you're going from just here's my doodle to I'm actually on school yearbooks and such.
Yeah, I never even thought about it that way, Chris. But yeah, I guess that first moment of like doing a big poster and seeing it posted in the hallway and walking past it and having kids look at it and comment.
So
And
when you were
that's
coming
true.
of age, even a little earlier than high school, but around that period, like what were your influences? Like, were you into Disney? Were you into comic books? Like, what were your creative things that you made you go, wow, I love this stuff?
Um, yeah, I mean, always had a ton of comic books, and I guess I have one of the same stories that um, other people that collected comics did when they were kids. That I had 2 cartons of huge comics that got dumped in the trash by my mom. And
My mother has that same story.
oh
All the
gosh, Randall, I'll
classics.
tell you. Oh, I mean, I had at one point like all the Marvel, like Spider-Man, Fantastic Four, like 1 through 10 of like all those titles.
Who was your
And
favorite comic book artist growing up at that period?
um, probably Carl Barks.
What would I know him from?
Um,
The name's so familiar, and yet I'm.
yeah, so oh my gosh, Carl Barks worked for Disney for many years. Um, Wrote and illustrated stories, the best stories. I mean, there's amazing Carl Barks collections right now, and I even I'm going to jump ahead just for a second. I
Sure.
haven't the way that he staged his pages. They were like story animation storyboards,
Wow.
so they felt like they were animated. I was watching cartoons while I was watching them. Brilliant. So I even over the years have told animators that they want to, if they don't have particular storyboards to look at, go back and look at those early Carl Barks Disney comics from the 50s.
Like Scrooge McDuck.
He created Uncle Scrooge.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
actually have some. Those are amazing.
Oh,
Folks,
they're
Google Scrooge McDuck. You'll see it's the capitalist Donald Duck. Randall, we can do a whole show
oh my
on Scrooge
God.
McDuck. We can't even go there. That's how insane it was.
You know what? There's been a lot of literature on Scrooge McDuck, actually, academic literature. It's very interesting.
No, he's right. Yeah.
I wanted
Yep.
to ask Jerry. Jerry, so you were always drawing as a kid?
Yeah, always drawing,
And
always cartooning. I was the kid in class the first day of school that always had a stack of 3-ring binders on my desk because all the kids were passing them over to me to draw cartoons on them. So I was that guy.
so you were drawing, and also you were watching Saturday morning cartoons that were big, right, when you were a kid, and reading the
Yeah,
comic
absolutely.
books, watching Disney
Yeah.
movies.
Yeah, I mean, Jay Ward really made my head explode.
Jay Ward, who did remind us again, which was his animation.
Well, Rocky and Bullwinkle
Oh yeah, I love
one.
that.
And it was it blew my mind. And in fact, there's a great Rocky and Bullwinkle coffee table book, and in there, proudly they display a letter from the executives at Disney, who said that the Rocky and Bullwinkle is complete blasphemy. It's sacrilege. The art is horrible. The writing is horrible. The backgrounds are haven't even been given any thought to. And
Can I jump into a philosophical question right now, Chris?
yeah.
Okay, but we're going to be moving on after that.
Okay, well, Jerry, so I've heard for years about this this philosophical conflict between like the Disney style animators and the more spare animators, like the Japanese animators and the Saturday morning animators. What do you think about this controversy?
I think all of it is valid. It's almost equal to like the fine arts controversy about a Mark Rothko painting of just blue on a canvas versus a Monet. I mean, which one is legitimate?
That's a great answer. That is, I mean, you're right.
True.
All things are equal. Hey, Randall, let's keep all the animation questions for just a little later in the show, because right now I want to get to your first career, which is graphic design.
Right.
In a way, really, you're kind of doing this in high school for the school. So I can see how it could easily morph. But how did you get from like a guy who's just drawing like yearbook stuff for the school to being a graphic designer? Tell us about that.
Yeah, so actually the graphic design, the whole journey began when I graduated high school and went to Santa Monica College. And my parents really wanted me to go to Art Center, which was a great college, for graphic design. And my girlfriend at the time was a student at Art Center. And between trimesters, I was hanging out with her and her friends. And it was like medical school students. It was oh my God, it was just dog eat dog, and they were very competitive, and it just wasn't my thing. I mean, by that time, my hair was halfway down my back, and I was doing other things, expanding my mind in other ways. And
were you a hippie?
Oh, me? No. I just dressed and acted like one and got high like one. So can we say that? Anyways,
there's a podcast.
Yeah. So
well, you had a good LSD.
You better. You betcha, baby.
Wait, someone in the arts doing mind-altering drugs? All right.
He had the CIA LSD.
Yeah. Okay, but
he had
back to graphic design.
Let me just say that at the time I told my parents to save their money because my dad worked hard and Art Center was very expensive. And I said, I'm not going to make it. This just isn't for me. So I went to Santa Monica College and I took a class by an instructor named Mario Semery, who gave up the life as a high-stress Art Center college teacher, moved to Santa Monica, and I got a great education from him. And that's where I learned about Saul Bass.
Oh, wow. The great graphic artist. I love his Vertigo, that Vertigo poster. I'm literally the man with the golden arm. Randall, do you remember the Saul Bass posters?
Yes. He made a lot of posters.
You've got one on you. Show us, Jerry.
You got a book.
This is great. Yeah, I mean he had a very minimalist...
He did a lot of intros for movies, Hollywood movies.
He did. The Man with the Golden Arm. And of course, he's most famous probably for all the logo designs for AT&T design that you see now. United Airlines, Quaker Oats. I mean, all of them. There's also
a rumor that he storyboarded out the entire Psycho shower scene sequence, and Hitchcock shot it.
Yeah, I've heard that, and I don't know if it's true or not.
I don't know either. I've done a lot of research into that, and I could never make heads or tails of it. I wanted to ask you another question, though, Jerry, about going back just a little bit. Is like you were saying that the art school students were very competitive. What is? I didn't go to art school. What does that mean for them to be competitive? I mean, what were they doing exactly? I mean, what was the environment like? How could an art school be so high pressure?
I think it was just sort of. Well, once you finished Art Center College of Design, you were recruited by Body by Fisher, who did all the GM design for the car design. They would come into the school and they would hand pick out students. So everybody was sort of clamoring and climbing over one another and kind of talking crap about one another, and boy, I just didn't like that. So I think,
considering that you didn't go through that traditional route and you did study with some great people, how did you then get into the system, man? How did you make the leap when you didn't have that degree?
Just kind of snowing my way into jobs.
What was your first big job?
How do you snow?
God.
Tell us how you snow. How do you snow into a job, man?
Yeah, I did kind of a mock portfolio of jobs, of clients that I didn't actually have. It's just kind of sample. Really, I guess it would have been more like a college portfolio, like leaving college. So you were showing the work that you did through classes. I did a logo for this fictitious company and that fictitious company. So it was really, I kind of actually did the same thing, didn't I? So it was really putting together samples of work, just without the college degree. But again, the Saul Bass thing was huge for me. So let me just go back just for a second. Yeah. And so when I was at Santa Monica College, I got turned on to Saul Bass by the instructor, and I spent hours and hours and hours in the library poring over Graphics magazine and Communication Arts magazine, and just following his work and learning and just reading everything what he said. He would talk about designing a logo. He would say, never, ever, ever work in color. Always work in black and white.
Really? Why did he say that?
Yeah, always because you're wanting to balance shapes, and working with color can throw you off. He's always said that an image should always work perfectly well in black and white, and then you can enhance it with color afterwards.
Wow.
But just you should be working with black and white, that contrast, so you know how images and shapes are balanced.
That's so fascinating. So you met, so I think did you end up showing him your work? I know there's a really wonderful story about you and Saul Bass.
Yeah, you want to hear it?
Yes, I do.
So fast forward to 1983, and I had a graphic design firm in Santa Monica. And I was doing a lot of logo work and a lot of design work and illustration. And I decided for the first time to enter Art Directors Club of Los Angeles, ADLA, annual design competition. I'd never done that before. And even since then, I hadn't done it again. But I entered two logos in the competition. One for a company called Desert Popsicle and another for Pear Blossom Music, which I think I may have sent you some images, or I can send them to you at some point.
Randall, do you have those images available?
Yeah, I'll get them up. Keep talking. Give me a minute.
Yeah, sure. So I entered those and didn't think twice about it, and then got a phone call and a piece in the letter saying, congratulations that you have won an award through the Art Directors Club of Los Angeles, and we're having a big cocktail party and awards presentation. So I did. So I went. I took my girlfriend at the time, and sitting at big round tables, and they were calling up. You heard of Chiat Day Advertising Agency?
Of course, yes. There's the binoculars out here in Venice.
Yeah, there you go.
Giant binoculars, folks.
And I met Jay Chiat. I met Jay Chiat years later in another completely separate thing that was just amazing. But so here I am sitting at this table and this huge award ceremony, and they're calling up different people in different categories. And then they said in the logo contest, and I didn't even know this, they said a special judges award to Jerry Leibowitz for Desert Popsicle Company. So I walked up and got it, and I didn't even know that I had got the best in show. And these were competing against all the biggest design firms from around the country. And afterwards, everybody was gathering in a room and having cocktails and drinks. And somebody walked over to me, and they said, "Are you Jerry?" And I said, "Yes." And they said, "Somebody would like to meet you." And I said, "Sure, of course." So I stood up, and she said, "Could you follow me?" So we walked across the room, and there, as we were walking towards, my hands are starting to shake. We're walking across the room, and there I saw Saul Bass sitting in a chair. He was hunched over. He had a cane. And she led me to Saul Bass, and she introduced us. And he stuck out his hand, and I embraced it. And he just said, "Nice work."
Wow, that's amazing. But we're looking at your work right now, and it is nice work.
Put it back up.
Let's put it back up. This is the one that he complimented you on. Let's take a look at it. I love
Can you see
Desert
it?
Pop, and in a weird way, I kind of see a Bassian influence.
Yeah, I see it.
In the monochromatic style of the black and white green. I mean, you didn't name this company, so I just love that you were able to get the objective correlative of just those two popsicles as humps. That's.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that's the thing about the most challenging thing about graphic design is doing logo work, because what you're saddled with is distilling an image, distilling a company's idea, a product, into a simple image with just a minimal amount of shapes. and trying to capture what that company is about, what their product is about. That's the greatest challenge.
What do you think
in
makes
design
for good logo work, good graphic design? What are the keys, would you say?
Balance for sure. I hate to use the word clever in art or writing, but I think in graphic design and in logo work, I think a lot of times that really applies. Like if a company is breeding horses, how would you incorporate a horse into the horse's head or whatever with the name of the company? And I love when people look at a logo and go, oh wow, that's cool. There's a light post there, and so I think that's one of the things I think that always makes that makes it. And I think also, and you may have seen even in that Desert Popsicle example, there's humor in it too. So I think that was sort of a thread all throughout a lot of this. So
yeah, for those of you who are just listening, on a white background, we see a camel. It's almost like a gestalt because it's also two popsicle sticks as hum. Randall, do we have any other of Jerry's graphic design?
Probably. Let's see.
Let's just take. Okay, so this one is for Western State horse breeders. You were just talking about it, where it's a W that also has, again, these are gestalts, which is you look at it and you see the other, and the head of a horse. It's a beautiful contrast of the capital words being in brown, the rest in black. Tell us a little bit about how you put something like this together.
Well, there again, when I talked about Saul Bass saying always design in black and white, it's clearly this is how this was done. For me, it's a minimalist approach always. The least amount of lines, the least amount of detail, I think is the challenge. Just using bold shapes and imagery, I think makes for the best design. That's just my personal preference.
What do you think, Jerry? I know the logo design went from it started simple and then it got really complicated in 3D even for like a while, like in the 90s or so, and then people got on their smartphones, the smartphones became big, and then now with Google's material design, it's all getting really simple again. I mean, what do you think about that?
Yeah,
that trend.
Yeah, it's true. I think I think thanks to Adobe, who released Premiere and all those programs that allowed you to make complex logos, and of course for people that wanted things to move on screen in 3D, you needed those to be done in something like Premiere. So I think there was a period there where people were creating more complex images. And now you're right though, when you see like Google and I think we're kind of going, I think people got a little tired of that. Like an example is, using a drop shadow on text.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's kind of like a taboo. It's like, it's passé.
Wait, didn't we used to have a drop shadow on ours?
Yeah, well, I like drop shadow. What is it a taboo now, Jerry?
You're fine. Actually, I thought the way that you had your drop shadow on your original logo, I thought it looked really cool.
Wow, you know what? That is a huge compliment from you, Jerry.
No,
Thank
I do.
You. I'm not anywhere near a graphic designer.
Well, no, it was a very extended long shadow, and I thought that looked cool.
Thank you. I was trying to capture like a more 70s aesthetic with that.
Yeah. No, it was neat. So again, it's simplifying. So you see kind of less and less of that, I think, now in good design.
So what I was going to say to you is, and not Randall, obviously Randall has many other things to do, but just somebody who is going to pursue, unless Randall, you want to have a change of heart. If someone want to break into this career now, they want to start out and they want to be a graphic designer, what career advice would you give? I'm going to ask you this 3 times. This is the first time. It's career day.
Yeah.
Sir, I'd like to become one. What advice do you have?
That's okay. Don't do what I did. If if you can have access to getting an education in design, I think that's great. Another thing too, when we're just mentioning all the different apps, I think there are now things where you can just. I say now that everybody is a graphic designer now, right? Everybody.
Yeah.
I think Adobe has a new Canva, app that kind of you do a minimal amount of work and it spits out. Some of them actually are pretty nice. It spits out designs for you. I think the more that I think those are really learning tools also. So I think the more that you use those apps and play around with them, and you see how an app may alter something that you initially put in there and made it better or cleaner. I think that's a good way to learn too. So I think now everything is hands-on, you guys. But back when I was doing all this work, you guys don't know what a mechanical is. So when I was preparing artwork, I would have a big piece of illustration board, and I would have to send out for type setting, and the typesetting would come back, and I'd have to use rubber cement or wax and put the letters down on a board and do what they call rubulith overlays that blocked out the individual colors. It was the transition to go ahead.
So when you made the final version, how did you have to present the final version of these logos to the company?
Yeah, so the final version was just always in black and white, and I would call out colors. I even have a.
So would it be like?
Well, people, you know what a Pantone book is, right?
Yes. Yeah, it's full of colors,
Pantone
right?
Colors. Yeah,
yes.
yeah. So the next step from handing over black and white artwork to a client would be walking them through the printing process. Letterheads, envelopes, stationery, all that, business cards,
so the final
brochures.
So the final would be like on a piece of paper, and it would be
I wish I kept some of those. It would be on a piece of illustration board. It would be an illustration board that was hand drawn with technical pens and rulers and French curves and the whole thing.
And the illustration board was white.
It was white, yes.
Well, guys, we got to move on to your brief foray as an underground comic book writer and illustrator, I guess in the late 60s, early 70s. You worked for Yellow Dog, which I believe they also owned Zap Comics. I know Zap Comics did Fritz the Cat, the Fabulous Freak Brothers, Wonder Warthog. I know that's more of a San Francisco scene, but you're at the LA scene.
Stuff. Yeah.
So tell us about how did you get started in the brief but spectacular time in America called underground comics?
Yeah, so it was around the same time while I was studying at Santa Monica College and studying all the Saul Bass stuff that I discovered rapidograph pens. They're fine technical pens. And I just started doing a bunch of drawings, and I would sit out between classes, and there was a friend of mine named Ron Lipking, who also was an underground cartoonist, came up to me and walked by the table and say, "Hey, that's pretty cool. You should send your stuff into Yellow Dog Comics or Zap Comics or any of those were all owned by the Printmen, by the way." So I did. I just started doing my little political, weird, mind expanded cartoons and sent them into Yellow Dog, and we got a nice letter back saying, "Hi, we would like to buy some of these," and that was it. And I didn't do it for a long time, but I did do it for a while because I kind of moved on to other things. But
you move on? So that was when you moved on to doing funnies, trying to do the LA. Was like something. Go on.
Yeah, you know what? Yeah, I was doing, and at the same time, I met an old friend of mine who was doing this ZZZ telephone recording thing, and I was, while I loved doing the underground comic stuff, it wasn't that fulfilling. I still wanted to write humor. and I wound up connecting with this telephone recording comedy line and writing a lot of bits for that. So
you became a comedy writer.
Yeah,
I did. That's true. So
that's kind of where you learned the art of the jokes, as they would say.
So here's an example. I'll see. I believe I'm going to try to do this, but it would be something like, "Thank you for joining us today for the next exciting adventure of Scuba Patrol. When we last left Scott and Billy, they were combing the ocean floor in search of the baked potato that had all the answers to life. Let's listen." Well, this is a surprise. What will happen next? Tune in next time. You'll hear Joshua say, "That's next time on Scuba Patrol."
Oh man, that is I like that. And then you ended up doing, what is that, ODR wavelength?
Yeah, so I wound up doing the I got a job at AT&T Recording. No affiliation with the big company.
Okay.
It was a tape duplicating company, and they had they were writing and syndicating a radio show called the ODR Wavelength. And I took over for the writers that had created the show and who they had fired. They had some disagreements, and unfortunately, as often happens, the writers had no claim to the show, and it was owned by AT&T Recording. So I took over and wrote those, and I have to say, what I was doing was terribly inferior to what the original guys had done.
But this is where you're really learning how to write on a deadline, right? This is where you're learning how to put out product all the time, and not just visual product, but oral product. Like what makes did you find that like almost like a school-like experience? You're learning as you go?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And we're also doing voice directing too, because we had the woman who was the voice of the ODR Wavelength was an actress. You may know her name, named Mercedes McCambridge.
Yes, I do.
She was the voice of the Exorcist in the film too. But I had never directed a voice recording session in my life, and here was this experienced actress sitting on the other side of the glass, and she delivered the first line, and I immediately stopped her and gave her a reading. And boy, did she just lay holy hell.
What did she say? What did she say?
No, she just went, "Don't give me a reading."
That's hysterical. I want to get back to this, but I want to just briefly say, while you're doing, you go from this very like
it was terrifying
underground stuff, and you decide you're going to go legit, and you're going to do like a syndicated funnies, right? Like something that we would just see in the funny pages when Randall and I were kids. Give us tell us about your attempt to do this very legit, very square thing, and I mean that as a compliment, not as a put down. Just very few of us will ever have that experience.
This rectangular thing. How was I doing this rectangular?
Yes.
Right? Yeah. Well, no, I mean, I always, again, it was just, God, I guess my interests were sort of all over the place. It was hard for me to focus because I loved comic strips. I was a huge fan of the Sunday Funnies. And I had always done little comic strips, along the way. And finally in the late 70s, I had a graphic design company and a printing company. And at that time I had an idea for a comic strip called Hey Coach.
What was that?
It was about? Yeah, it was about a big time, high profile college coach that gave up that life and moved to a small town and to a small college, and the characters that he met along the way there. And
Randall, do we have any Hey Coach stuff? Did you send us any of that stuff?
I don't think so. I didn't send anything to you.
Okay, no worries.
I didn't send anything to you.
Continue on. Yeah. So he was kind of
he was everything everything was shrunk down for him, The world around him had shrank, but the characters expanded, and he was trying. Here was this small college coach with now a small college coach with a high profile who was trying to recruit major talent to this tiny little college. Anyways, it was fun. Chris, you and I have talked. I'm an avid sports fan.
He is. I've gone to baseball games there. He is fun.
Oh God, yeah. I've got my wife calls herself a sports widow, but
so you go to the Dodgers
sad.
games?
So anyway, hey coach.
Dodgers, Lakers, all. Anyway, so I submit. I love the Wizard of Id in BC. And at the time, in the late 70s, Field Enterprises was like the syndicate. So I sent.
Who did they have at that period? Who were they representing?
Well, Wizard of Id was a huge one. BC was a huge one. Yeah. Johnny Hart.
I love that stuff. Yeah, great stuff.
It was great stuff. It's great stuff. And there's a handful more. So
if they pick you up, you're going to be world famous.
Yeah, exactly. So I put together 2 weeks worth of strips and I sent it off to Universal Press Syndicate to like about 6 different places. And I got a call from a fellow named Lou Little from Field Enterprises. And he said, "Hi, Jerry." He said, "This is Lou Little from Field Enterprises." He said, "Well, you sent me these and I'm reading them." He said, "You appear to have the ability to write comic strips." He said, This is good stuff." He said, "Can you send me another 6 weeks of comic strips?" And I said, "Sure." So here I am. I'm understanding that I can't take 3 months to do it, that I have to be able to show that I can do these daily. So I was doing them, in a period of, so that's 42. So in a period of less than a month, I did like 42 strips.
Wow.
And
again, that's a lot. Again, here you are learning to work on your deadlines faster, more product faster.
And I got it. Yeah. So I sent them off to him and I get another phone call and says, "Hi, Jerry, got these. I'm going to send these back to you with a grade." Actually, I had the numbers page, the pages numbered, and he went over each page with me, like B+, A minus, whatever it was, and he liked them again. So let me just say that this went on for 9 months, and he kept asking me for 3 more weeks, another month's worth, and I did hundreds of strips for them in this development. So you want to hear the tragic end of the story?
Yes, please.
Yeah, let's hear it.
I tipped it. I blew it. So he says, Jerry goes, "I'm coming to," he was in Vermont, by the way. So he said, "I'm coming to Irvine, to our offices out there in Southern California, and I would like to meet you personally, and I would like to discuss going forward with the strip and meeting with our marketing department." And that was it. So I was married at the time, and we had a bottle of champagne chilled on ice, and here I was, and I drive down to, it was a 4 o'clock in the afternoon appointment, which, probably not the best time for an appointment here in Southern California to be driving down the 405. So here I am driving down to Irvine, and it's just bumper to bumper. And I left 3 hours early to make sure I was there on time. So I got there and I went in the front door and he wasn't there yet. And the woman said, "Lou is called from a payphone and he's going to be late." So I sat there and waited for about an hour and a half, and the front door bursts open and he comes storms past me and the receptionist and into an office and slams the door. And I kind of looked at her and I said, "Is that him?" And she said, "Yes." So next she gets buzzed and tells me to go in. So I went in, sat in front of him, and he said, "Hi, Jerry, nice to meet you." And you could tell he was harried. And he said, okay, so let's see, this last batch, these are good. But but you know what? Hold on. Yeah, we're not really going to move forward with this at this time.
What? So quickly?
Yeah.
You just changed gears.
Like that.
Oh no.
And what did I do? I just sat there completely stunned. How do you? I couldn't. All the things that I would have liked to have said, I didn't say, and I just kind of sat back in my seat. And the first thing I would really want to say is, there's a bar across the street. Why don't we go over there and have a drink? But he was so wound up and so pissed off, and he was muttering about Southern California traffic. And so that was it. And before I knew it, he kind of stood up to shake my hand like I was to leave. So I got up and slowly shook his hand. I think my mouth was hanging against my chest. And here I am, like in my car, driving back to after 9 months of development with Field Enterprises.
Well, did you ever find out why he changed his mind?
No.
Well, in a way, Jerry, I'd say it's kind of, if this is a hero's journey, this is your big moment, right? Because you've cut your teeth in the commercial advertising world. You have explored subversive art as an underground comic artist. You have learned what the industry demands are in the more commercial medium of the funnies. You get into producing sketch comedy on the audio level, working with talent. And now we're going to get to the last 10 minutes of the show where I really want to deep dive into your career, which you have as of today still as a professional animator. So, yeah. Sir, how did you get started in animation?
Yeah, let me just touch on one thing, because I think I think it's somewhat important. After the thing with Field Enterprises, I started a weekly free newspaper called the LA Funnies, because I realized the cartoonists like myself had nowhere to show their work. Actors had workshops, musicians had coffee houses and clubs, and artists had galleries, but there was no place for cartoonists to show their work. So I started a free weekly newspaper called the LA Funnies, and I got thousands of submissions from artists all over the country that wanted their work in the newspaper. I'll give you some copies of it. Actually, it's all digitized.
Hey, actually, while we're at it, because that is a happy ending, Randall, while we're talking about animation, can you start showing some of Jerry's remaining work on the screen? Mm-hmm. Just because I want to make sure we get to everything in the next 10 minutes.
There's some Mouse and Monster stuff there.
Okay, great. Let's start right there, because I think Mouse and Monster is really where it all begins, right?
Well, yeah. Leading up to that, I was working with a very dear friend of mine who had an animation project set up at Universal Studios. So he pulled me in to help write and help do some illustrations, and so we worked together on that. And that was actually my first. That was my first foray into dealing with networks and pitching and all that kind of great stuff. So, but honestly, it all felt like a natural progression for me. It incorporated writing and art and humor, and so I like making funny things. So and then after that, I came up with this idea for these two characters, the Mouse and the Monster. Basically, just because I liked I just liked the sound of the words together. Created this, pitched it to United Paramount Network, who was starting a kids show. A very dear woman there named Ellen Levy Sarnoff, who's related to the whole Sarnoff family from NBC.
Oh wow!
And she loved the show, and she said, and to your point, Chris, she said, what makes you think that you can run a cartoon show? There's a lot of work. There's a lot of pressure. And I said, you know what? I said, I've done a lot of different things. I've had a graphic design firm where I'm balancing 6, 7, 8, 9 clients at a time. And it's fine. I'm not scared of that at all. In fact, I kind of embrace that challenge. I think it would be great. So anyway, we wound up developing the show. I worked with the guy that did Daria on MTV.
Oh wow, I love that show.
A writer named Glenn Eichler, terrific guy, and we kind of co-developed the pilot, and sold it to, had got it placed and got it on the air at United Paramount Network. So that was great fun. That was my first experience in actually getting a show on the air.
And then the ball just kept on rolling from there?
Yeah. We wound up, so I wound up connecting with one of the writers on The Mouse and the Monster, who's become one of my very dear friends, a fellow named Mark Drop, a wonderfully gifted, creative mind. And we just became friends, and then we just started creating and developing shows together.
And some
pitching.
of them were successful and some were not successful. I always like to ask this question: what have you learned from those successes, and what have you learned from those failures?
Yeah, just keep going. Just keep doing it. Because if you're, if you get depressed or get too down about any of this, then don't do it.
What do you think makes for a?
Hold on, my cat is
sorry about that.
Clawing. It's okay.
Randall, we've talked about a lot about animation. You must have some animation question for Jerry.
What do you think about Ralph Bakshi in general? Do you like his movies, his work?
Oh no, I do. In fact, our producer director on Mouse and Monster, a fellow named Kent Butterworth, had just come from working with Ralph Bakshi and did a lot with him. And he has. So I've never worked with Bakshi. I love the end product. I think it's pretty amazing. But Kent said that he said you have no idea what a kind of difficult and demanding character he is to work for and work with. He worked with John Kricfalusi, John K. from Ren and Stimpy, which is my all-time favorite cartoon series. Bakshi. What can you say? Bakshi's amazing.
We actually talked about Daria recently as a Gen X touchstone show for comedy. So you talked to the creator of Daria, you said? You worked with him?
Glenn Eichler was very involved in in creating the show and running the show and head writer for it. So that was a touchstone series for sure.
It was another great cartoonist, not really something more of an animator, but I guess you worked with him in animation, is Berkeley, I'm going to completely get his name wrong, Berkeley Breathed, who did Bloom County, one of my favorites.
Yeah, Bloom County. Yeah, absolutely.
So what was it that you guys were working on together, if you can share?
So that was, so we had sold Atomic Puppet to Technicolor. Hold on a second, Atomic Puppet. So when we went into the pitch meeting, by the way, for Atomic Puppet, we went in with this.
Wow, that's awesome.
Wait, let me.
So we had a.
Got the puppet.
Are we on the air yet? So we went into we created and developed the show and decided to have a puppet made by this sort of amazing puppeteer at this incredible studio out in the Valley who did Lamb Chop for.
Oh wow!
Yeah, Pat Breimer was the fellow's name. Did a lot of industry stuff. So we walked in. This is just a great pitch meeting with Warner Brothers. They came with 8 executives sitting around a table, and which I love to pitching is. I'll tell you, that's another whole. Tell us
a little bit about how you pitch
episode
shows.
You could do.
Because I've seen your books, and I know that you're beautiful. Randall, he has these beautiful illustrations, his storyboards, I guess, right, and character breakdowns.
Well, no, they're just here for an example. Like here's a pitch book for Atomic Puppet, and I don't know if you can see.
Yeah. So it's got great art. It's got character work.
And this, I'll tell you, this is an interesting thing. This thing here, you can see it. you sort of see it. It's called it was a character interrelationship chart that I just started doing myself, that I used when I did The Mouse and the Monster, and I did it for my own purposes. Because I wanted to know how each character would react to the other characters in a scene. And I incorporated that into all our pitches. And we were actually at a pitch at DreamWorks once, and we were pitching a primetime show. And the fellow Damon Ross said he was in there with his partner, and they both said at the same time, almost like, "We're stealing that idea." They loved that development idea. And subsequently, we've seen other animators, other creators doing that now, and I'm sure they're recommended to do it by.
What makes for a good pitch meeting pitch? What do you feel like when you're pitching an animated show, which is probably very different from a live action show? What is like the big challenge? What's the big learn?
Well, I think the first big thing, and I've told this to young animators that are always a bit intimidated by pitch meetings. You walk into a room and here's a few executives sitting across the table from you, kind of stone-faced, looking at you. And I always tell them, look, you've spent a year or however long it is creating this show. This is your time. This is your time right now. Those people sitting across the desk from you, you're not wasting their time. They're being paid to sit there and listen to you. So own it, take your time, enjoy it, and whatever happens, happens. So that's always been my philosophy.
Any other advice
pitching.
you would give to anyone who's trying to break in to the animation field? Either as a writer or an artist or both? Or an actor?
Well, yeah, no, I would, aside from going to the school, like places like Cal Arts that have these great, in Valencia that have these great animation programs, I would say just storyboard your things out, learn from comic books, learn from Carl Barks. We're kind of going full circle here. But, with all the vector animation programs there are now, obviously there was Flash animation, which has been taken over by Toon Boom, and you can sit and you can make your own cartoon. If you want to take the time to do it, you can sit and create your own animations now, which couldn't have done that 25 years ago. So start out making a 15-second cartoon, make a 20-second cartoon, expand it, learn about characters, learn about relationships between characters. I think the same thing that makes a great, obviously animation is hyper real, right? So the visually, but the same thing that make live action great are a lot of the same things that make animation great. It's all about story and pathos and characters, and so.
Hey, those are the things that make it great. That's interesting. Anything? Oh, go ahead, Randall. Sorry.
Yeah, I like. That's the advice I'd give artists, right? Just do it, and it's even easier today. It's even easier to do it today, right?
Well, yeah, I was just going to say, Randall, that there are so many more outlets now. Don't forget, at one point you had, the Fox Kids Network, Channel 11, and then all of a sudden here in Los Angeles, then you had, Cartoon Network popped up, the Nickelodeon popped up. Now, I mean, my gosh, there's all these streaming services. There's web series that specifically will feature animation. So there's way more markets now. I think that the opportunity is much greater now than it was in the past.
Before we ended with you, I wanted to ask one question, Chris. Jerry, what is your most favorite project you ever worked on?
Is it incorporating everything? You're talking about animation?
Well, just whatever you most fondly remember, had the best time working on. Maybe you love the results. Just anything.
I say it was definitely The Mouse and the Monster. So, and I say that because for a few reasons, and I'll just encapsulate it. Having never worked on an animated show before, I was allowed to be the showrunner for that show, which was just absolutely absurd. I was executive producer, creator, executive producer, and showrunner. And it all felt so totally natural to me. Going in there, given an office, and here I am. I'm working with the editor, and I'm working with the storyboard artist, and I have a meeting with the character designers, a meeting with the prop designers, a meeting with the sound effects department, all that, and it was just, and I just loved it. And I was working 16 hours a day there, and it was terrific. Let me say, just there was a kind of a funny story attached to it. This was UPN's first kid. There was a kids network. They were just starting a kids network, and I thought I was kind of allowed to run everything, and I thought that this was how animation worked. I went, wow, this is awesome. You create a show, you pitch it, you get on the air, and they just let you tell everybody what to do, and everybody wants to make sure that your vision, winds up on screen. And wow, this is amazing. And then, of course, as I learned, as I talked to more people in the industry, people say that is just the most bizarre experience, and sort of the antithesis of really the way the industry works. So I was really spoiled from the outset. Which
you've had some luck. Well, let me ask you, how old were you when you were showrunner on that show?
Let's see. So I was like 43 years old, something like that. Yeah.
Well, Jerry, one last question before we go, because we're almost out of time. But knowing what you know now, having gone on this amazing journey in graphic design, as comedy writer, as a comic book illustrator and writer, as an animator, is there something, one single piece of wisdom, one piece of advice as a visually creative individual, as a creator, that you could just give to people who are trying to pursue this life on their own? What one piece of advice would you give us before we go?
Follow your muse. As cliche as that might sound.
Okay, then I'll ask you the other question. Is there something that you wish you knew when you started that you now know?
Is there something I wish I knew when I started
that you now have learned the hard way?
No, absolutely not. Had I known everything back then what I know now, I would have been an absolute mess. No.
Understood. Well, Jerry, I want to thank you again. Anything you want to plug or promote before we sign off?
No, one other thing is, as far as comic strips, the most extensive work I did on a comic strip, in 2002, I did a comic strip called Dot and Com. It's dotandcom.com. I did it for a year online, and we got about 4,000 hits a day, according to the stats, and tons of fan mail. And it's still something dear to my heart, and something I may revive again. But,
we'll look for Dot and Com. Until then, Jerry Leibowitz, thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
It's been a pleasure
for having me.
Yeah, you're welcome, Jerry.
I'm
Thanks
Chris.
for the great show. I'm Randall.
That was Jerry, and we'll talk again.
Bye.
Okay, guys.
Bye.
Talk to you soon. See ya.